You know the feeling. A healthy relationship suddenly feels like a cage, so you find a way to blow it up. Or a moment arrives that requires a choice, and you freeze entirely. Sometimes you just ice everyone out, retreating into a sudden, impenetrable solitude. On the surface, these look like simple mistakes, but the glass always cracks from the inside. You are encountering the Puella Aeterna, the eternal girl. She is a psychological pattern that thrives in a culture that venerates youth and fears commitment. She lives in a state of permanent suspension, treating life like an endless rehearsal for a performance that never actually begins. Carl Jung argued that these repetitive failures aren't the result of bad luck, they are the work of unconscious complexes. He famously warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think of your psyche as a boardroom committee. Ideally, a mature, conscious ego sits in the chair, making the final calls. But when that chairperson checks out, a powerful, ancient archetype from the collective unconscious steps in and takes the seat. In these moments, you are no longer in control of your own life. You are being lived by an image. Psychiatrist Jean Shinoda Bolen identified 7 distinct feminine archetypes that vie for this control. These aren't just myths. They are recurring patterns of human behavior that define how we work, how we love, and how we self-destruct when we lose our inner orientation. To find your way back to the head of the table, you must recognize which archetype is currently running the meeting from the shadows. Because as long as they stay in the dark, they will keep you trapped in the same cycles of destruction. We start with the independent archetypes. They find their identity in distance, viewing any emotional vulnerability as a fatal weakness. Artemis is the fierce achiever. In her shadow state, she is a skilled archer who views life as a hunt and people as targets or obstacles. She focuses so intensely on her goals that she ignores the collateral damage she leaves behind. This behavior often stems from a childhood spent defending herself against critical parents or rejecting a mother she saw as weak. She develops an inner boar, a destructive rage, that allows her to ghost partners or ice out friends the moment they get close enough to see her own wounds. Then there is Athena, the strategist. She was mythologically born as a fully grown adult, and many Athena women share that experience, pushed out of childhood too soon and forced to rely on their intellect to survive. She uses logic as armor, deploying the Medusa effect to petrify those who try to reach her emotionally. She isn't trying to be cruel. She is simply using cold, unblinking facts to keep a messy, unpredictable world at a safe distance. Hestia represents the shadow of withdrawal. In the myth, she was swallowed by her father and spent the most time in isolation. A Hestia woman mirrors this by retreating into domestic or spiritual solitude to avoid the messy demands of real-world ambition. For these 3, isolation isn't a personality trait, it's a structural defense. They are protecting a wounded inner child by refusing to let anyone close enough to hurt them again. The relational group operates on the opposite extreme. These archetypes find their identity entirely through others, and their shadows manifest as a desperate, consuming attachment. The shadow of Hera is the partner who completely erases her own identity to become Mrs. Somebody. She projects all of her value onto her husband, believing that she is nothing without the institution of marriage. This total dependency breeds a terrifying insecurity. Instead of dealing with her own internal void, she displaces her pain onto other women, viewing them as rivals to be destroyed, rather than acknowledging the cracks in her own relationship. Demeter, the nurturer, devolves into the devouring mother. Her maternal instinct curdles into a need for total control over the people she feeds. She becomes a martyr, performing unasked favors and then using her exhaustion as a weapon. Her love comes with a hidden bill, delivered via passive-aggressive guilt trips, designed to keep her loved ones perpetually dependent on her. Finally, there is Persephone, the naive maiden. She avoids the weight of adulthood by refusing to make any definitive choices. She stays in a state of perpetual waiting, hoping a savior will arrive to finally begin her life. These relational shadows involve a tragic trade. They sacrifice their authentic selves and shapeshift into whatever a partner or child wants, just to avoid the agony of being left alone. Aphrodite represents a category of her own, the transformative shadow. She is driven by the immediate sensory thrill of the new. She is addicted to the golden light of a fresh romance. In the heat of infatuation, she is a muse, sparking creativity and passion. But she is in love with the feeling, not the person. As soon as the honeymoon phase fades and she has to face a flawed, ordinary human being, she gets bored and vanishes. She leaves a wake of rejected, confused partners behind her, constantly running from the reality of aging and the deeper work required for a lasting bond. For Aphrodite, the shadow is the inability to see value in the ordinary. She destroys the possibility of deep connection because she refuses to stay in the room once the magic feels like work. Psychological maturation requires a difficult sacrifice. It asks you to trade a comforting, childlike illusion for a grounded, sometimes heavy reality. The eternal girl believes her freedom lies in keeping every door open, but by refusing to step through any of them, she builds nothing. She remains a guest in her own life, floating through experiences that never leave a mark. Breaking this cycle means reclaiming the chair of the committee. This transition moves you from the role of the maiden, who waits to be chosen, to the archetype of the queen. The queen is the integrated sovereign of her own inner world. She doesn't ask for permission to exist. She commands her own boundaries and sustains her own value. The path to this sovereignty starts with the weight of commitment. It's found in the decision to look at an imperfect life or an imperfect partner and stay to do the work. This choice is what anchors the ego and prevents the shadow from taking over the boardroom. Real freedom comes from the strength to remain. It is the ability to take absolute responsibility for your own psyche, build something that lasts, and finally become the author of your own story.